MegaPodTastic.
Good morning, MegaPodlings. It's Krazy Joe here. I recently received a comment on one of my videos from one of my regular viewers, a viewer by the name of Joey Baseball. And he wanted to know my take on several things. And one of the things he mentioned is something that, quite frankly, I wasn't going to go into. Maybe I would have mentioned it on a live stream, but it didn't seem something worth doing a whole video about. But when he specifically asked about it, it got me thinking. And maybe it is time to do a little more talk on this subject. So Joey Baseball, if you're watching this one, you may have inadvertently opened up a can of worms here. Because we're going to talk about Robocop. We are going to talk about Robocop. In fact, this may become a series of topics about Robocop, series of videos on the topic of Robocop. Now, there's things that I often want to do, and hey, there's Jules making a guest appearance. There's things I often want to do, and I cannot do because of time and the constraints on my time with the kids. You know, this is a side thing I do. Being dad and being, going to work full time. Those are my, main thing. So time is at a premium for me. So while there's things I'd like to do, I often don't get to them. But I would like to do a deep dive on the Robocop series. I think maybe that would be an interesting thing to do. Do a real deep dive and explore every facet of the Robocop universe. Now let's talk about why we're doing this conversation now. KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, has been doing a series of ads for several years now. I believe they started in 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. But they started a series of ads where famous comedians were playing Colonel Sanders in the ads. And the joke was that Colonel Sanders would switch off every several months and a new actor would be Colonel Sanders. We've had Daryl Hammond from Saturday Night Live was Colonel Sanders. Norm Macdonald was Colonel Sanders. Jim Gaffigan was Colonel Sanders. Then they got away from comedians and they made it George Hamilton for a while, which was bizarre. But they've taken it to a new level and unveiled a new series of commercials where Robocop is now Colonel Sanders. Robocop. The character of Robocop is now Colonel Sanders. And I will try to pop in one of these commercials here. I'm not going to put the audio in, but you can see what they look like. You see he's wearing the wig. He's got the glasses. They made Robocop. They're calling him Colonel Robocop in these commercials. And they've done about 4 of them. So this is weird. This is a little bizarre. Now, what do we know about these, who's in these commercials? Well, it is absolutely the voice of Peter Weller, the original Robocop. Peter Weller is providing the voice in these commercials. But it has not been confirmed that Peter Weller is wearing the costume. He might be, but that hasn't been confirmed. As of the day I'm recording this, that has not been confirmed. Reps for Peter Weller did come out and say, oh yeah, he's involved. He's involved. But they did not actually say he was wearing the costume, so he could be doing voiceover. Now, if you're unaware, it was recently announced that Neill Blomkamp, District 9 Neill Blomkamp, is making a sequel to the original Robocop trilogy called Robocop Returns. It is what I like to call an unboot, where something got rebooted and then they reverse it back to the old continuity. I call it an unboot. Robocop is being unbooted. There was questions about whether Peter Weller would return, and I had heard Peter Weller said he wasn't interested. But now he's doing this. So that begs the question. Here comes Jules. There he comes. Look at him. Don't look at me. Look at the camera. Say hi to them, Jules. Say hi. They're over there. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. Oh, he's showing you his butt. That's Jules's butt right there. Very nice, Jules. Very nice. These fine people tune in and you show them your butt, you should be ashamed. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful, man. So anyway, Jules, I promise to give you a lot of attention when I'm done with the video. But right now I'm going to put you down because you're right in front of the camera. Sorry about that. He will get some attention after we're done shooting. I promise. So Peter Weller is now doing these commercials. That begs the question, is Peter Weller going to come back for the new movie? He previously said he wasn't interested. Well, we don't know, but it's an interesting wrinkle, isn't it? I think it is. So let's talk about Robocop. The original Robocop, 1987. Got the Blu-ray right here. This Blu-ray is actually recently, I paid full price for it, but this has recently been available in Dollar Trees. If you can find this in a Dollar Tree, my God, this is a sci-fi classic. If you don't own this, you should. At least I think so. It's a sci-fi classic, man. So you go check your local Dollar Tree. See if you can find Robocop. My God, that's a steal for $1. This is a great, you know what they say. I'd buy that for $1. I had to, didn't I? The joke was just dangling right there in front of me. So anyway, this is a classic. One of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. Tremendous classic. Let me tell you something. When Ghostbusters 2016 came out a few years back, people said that the people who did not like the movie, or who did not want to see the movie, were misogynists and were doing it because they hated women. Now, I'm sure there were a few. Probably more than a few. There's a jerk in every crowd, right? There's a jerk everywhere. But a lot of people did not want to see that movie. It had nothing to do with misogyny. They weren't interested. They didn't like the fact that it was taking part in a different continuity. They didn't like the part that Dan Aykroyd wasn't involved. But one of the things those accusing the ones who didn't want to see it of misogyny, the one thing I always heard them say was, well, how come you didn't complain when Robocop got remade? I'll tell you why, because it wasn't women. That's why you didn't complain. It wasn't women. This time it's women, now you're complaining. Well, I'm going to tell you why we didn't complain when it was Robocop. Robocop was broken long before it ever got rebooted. That reboot was not the thing that broke Robocop. Robocop was long broken before that reboot ever happened. All right, so Robocop, true classic, 1987. What follows this up? Robocop 2 in 1990. Robocop 2, it's not awful. It's not awful, but it's not very good. It's not a great movie. I mean, I like it as a guilty pleasure. Obviously, it gets Peter Weller back. It gets Nancy Allen back. They're great in the parts, but the script, it's not as good a movie. It's just not. So, and I'm sorry if you love Robocop 2, but I think what my opinion on Robocop 2 is the general consensus. Robocop 2, not a great movie. Then in 1993, we get Robocop 3. And you know what? Robocop 3 sat on the shelf. It was made, and they knew they had a bomb on their hands, and they just sat on it, and were like, what are we going to do with this? And they finally quietly released it in 93. It had been on the shelf. Peter Weller didn't come back. They got a guy named John Robert Burke, who, he was fine. He was fine. I mean, he wasn't the issue. Again, not a very good movie. It looked a little cheaper. It didn't look like the kind of care that went into the first two was put into it. Not good. So now we had our second bad sequel. And some people will tell you Robocop 3 was the worst. Personally, I think it was moderately better than Robocop 2. Neither is a great movie. Make no mistake, neither of those Robocop sequels are great. But I think 3 is moderately better. That's just me. So then what happens? Well, Robocop comes to television. We get Robocop the series. This is Robocop the series. It stars Richard Eden as Robocop, and it seemingly reboots the continuity. So this is actually the first reboot of Robocop. Now, does it really reboot the continuity? It's hard to say. It's really hard to say because he has a new partner, but Ann Lewis, his original partner, died in Robocop 3. So you could say, well, he's got a new partner because his old partner died. Except in the opening credits, they show the new partner saying, "Murphy, it's you," which was Nancy Allen's line in the original film. So by having the new partner do that line in the credits of the TV series, it tells us that this is a new continuity where she has always been his partner. She was his partner from the start in this continuity. They never really make it clear, but it's easy to assume this is a reboot. So this series seemingly rebooted RoboCop long before the 2014 film ever did. Show lasts one season. Not very well received. I own the DVDs here and I haven't seen every single episode. What happens next? About 1995 or so, I believe, Sci-Fi Channel decides they're going to air a 4-part miniseries called RoboCop Prime Directives. RoboCop Prime Directives ignores this TV series, ignores RoboCop 2 and 3, and bills itself as a direct sequel to RoboCop. So, essentially, RoboCop Prime Directives, the miniseries from the 90s, is the second reboot. Because it's writing off everything that went before, except RoboCop 1. That's still continuity. But all the RoboCop sequels and RoboCop the series, out the window. This is like the new RoboCop 2, basically. So again, it's been rebooted. That brings us to 2014. We get the remake, or reboot, if you will, that stars Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson, Gary Oldman, Jackie Earle Haley. And it's honestly not bad. It's not bad. It's not great, but you know what? It's probably better than the sequels. That said, I'd rather watch the sequels. I know this is strange. RoboCop 2014 is probably a better movie. But there's something about seeing Peter Weller in the part, you know. RoboCop 2 is not as good, but I'd probably rather watch RoboCop 2. So the 2014 film, I got problems with it. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And one of the reasons that, you know, they say, how come the people are complaining about Ghostbusters but not RoboCop, is because RoboCop, by the TV series which rebooted it, and the Prime Directive miniseries that rebooted it, it had already been rebooted. The original continuity was long torn to shreds. So the 2014 movie was nothing new. Like, RoboCop fans were used to that at that point. It's okay. The best thing about the 2014 movie, the best thing is that it inspired them to remaster the original and put it out on Blu-ray. The movie looks gorgeous now, and this disc came out to coincide with the 2014 release. Sometimes that's the best thing about remakes, is it brings people back to the original. Now Neill Blomkamp is involved. He's going to go back to the original continuity. RoboCop returns. And we got Peter Weller doing these commercials. So, what does it all mean? I don't know. But I think what I'd like to do is rewatch all the RoboCop movies, finally finish the TV series, and rewatch the miniseries Prime Directives. And do a deep dive on RoboCop and what came before. And I've been inspired to do this by some KFC ads. So there you go. And I'd like to end this video by pointing out that this KFC ad is not the first time RoboCop has been used in a commercial to sell chicken.
롯데햄 프라이드 치킨.
롯데햄 프라이드 치킨.
발라 먹으니까 실감나게 맛있습니다.
통날개 더 주세요.
와, 뼈 없는 닭튀김 이건 모를 거야?
뼈 없는 닭튀김.
롯데햄 프라이드 치킨.
롯데햄 냉동식품.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas. With the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas. But no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.